This is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shane Bryan. In the words of the immortal AC/DC, it is harder than it looks. These interviews will give you a glimpse into the lives of the artists that we've sung along with, danced and rocked out to. Some go deep into their past and others celebrate their recent releases. But all of them show that regardless of who you are, it's always a long way to the top. Welcome to the very first Long Way to the Top. This series was developed off the back of both the Bad Boys podcast and the wonderful chats that I've had with artists on LAFM. Some of them are brand new and some of them are resurrected interviews from the archives. In some cases, I'll be joined by my Bad Boys co-host, Andrew Hackett, and then other times, it's just me, the mic, and my musical hero. Even now, after countless interviews, I still get a nervous excitement in chatting with my guests, and I hope that that will never change, because it's the admiration for their music that I want you to experience as well, as you embark on your journey with them on their long way to the top. My first guest is Aussie singer-songwriter Diesel, who last year celebrated the 30th anniversary of Hepfidelity. This is Long Way to the Top.
Hi.
Hey Diesel, how are you?
I'm good. You can call me Mark.
Mark. Well, yeah. For the show I won't, but for the
no worries.
2022, it's marking the 30th anniversary of your first, well, your solo record. You were with Johnny Diesel on the Injectors before that. Hepfidelity featured Tip of My Tongue, Man Alive. I mean, incredible album. Reached number one on the ARIA chart. Stayed there for 4 weeks. What is the thinking behind doing a vinyl release apart from the fact that you love vinyl?
Well, yeah, I think it's become like there's been quite a few 30th anniversaries in this year. It says that 1992 was, quite an amazing year for releases, I guess. Yeah. But not to sound like I'm sort of, boasting or whatever, but there's only one album that, was the album of the year, and probably not that many albums that were number one, I guess, in Australian albums that year that can both say both of those things. So it's a pretty special thing. And I guess I asked the same question myself. It was like, why are we focusing on that one album? And then it was like, oh, okay, yeah. And I'd actually forgotten that it was that it won album of the year. I remember winning Best Male Artist that year, but I don't remember it being album of the year. So there you go. So yeah, I guess it's far from a perfect album by any means, but it definitely was a great kickstart to my solo career. And it could have gone, it's a really cliche thing to say, but it could have gone, terribly wrong, really. I think leaving the comfort of a band and a successful, highest debut of all time by an Australian artist at that point.
Yeah.
It was kind of the, swimming right completely upstream to do what I did then.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had people around me that were supportive, and I don't remember a lot of resistance from at least the people in my camp, besides my band, which were pretty shocked and bummed. But, I think when the record came out, everyone, it was all put to rest. It was like, okay, well, he's made a very different album. Yeah. I didn't make just like Johnny Diesel and the Injectors number 2, but except without them, and that would have been a pretty bogus thing to do. And everyone sort of, I guess, understood that, oh, okay, this person has, more facets musically that they wanted to show and stuff. So it was made it kind of legit.
Yeah, look, during that time, there was a lot of, I guess, for want of a better word, sort of rock and pop type albums that were coming out. But you've released an album that, and I mean, I only really sort of picked up on this in going back and re-listening over the last few years, that it's very blues heavy. I mean, you basically took blues to the mainstream with this album.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wrote with some people that, like for Jerry Williams, for instance, is someone that wrote for people like the Fabulous Thunderbirds and Bonnie Raitt and people like that. So he's, well and truly, steeped in the blues, but I wanted to put like a modern sort of spin on it. But they are, I mean, essentially, they're all quite sort of blues based songs. You're right. Yeah. You're right in saying that.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, to celebrate the whole release, you've actually got another 10 tracks from that era that you recorded. These were just sitting there, and you've just uncovered them.
Yeah, look, it was stuff that I was working on either before the recording of Hepfidelity, and a lot of it, the burst that happened afterwards. I was very inspired after making that record. It was an incredible experience for me to work with the people that I work with, and it was also a time of me becoming autonomous with being able to make recordings, which was such a big deal for me.
Yeah,
it kind of reached a tipping point where I was suddenly completely self-sufficient, and that meant like not having to call up somebody or book a studio and go, hey, I want to record something. Can we assemble? And it allowed me to go to, places in Paris and Rome and in London and just everywhere to and I'd book studio time, and I'd go in and as a loner and just make recordings. And it was really, really a great time for me. It was something that in my teens, I never had any access to equipment to make recordings whatsoever. Recording as a kid was like getting 2 tape recorders and putting them in front of the hi-fi and like dubbing one from the other and ending up with a pile of hiss. So, but I always had this flair, going right back to my parents. Like, I think it was my 5th birthday, and I'd heard a rumor in my family, because I'm the youngest of 7 kids. So I heard from somewhere further up the ranks that, mum and dad are getting you a recorder for your birthday. And here's me thinking they're going to buy me like a tape recorder. Like, wow, that's great. I'm going to be able to record things. And it ended up being an actual recorder.
One of the flute recorder.
You blow into. I was a bit bummed, I have to say, but any instrument is a good instrument. But yeah, and even at that age, I had, visions of recording. So, and I liked technology, and I was fascinated with anything with knobs or sliders. So yeah, I mean, to be able to finally have be able to make recordings, and these extra tracks are real. And most part, they're pretty much me sort of just doing everything, and it's me going into the world of self-sufficiency.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever use that recorder in any of your recordings?
I can't remember not that actual one, but I do have one over there on my table. I have a table in my studio. I call it the small instrument table. It's everything that can live on a table is on it. Melodicas and auto harps and omni harps, right. Omnichords, I should say. Yeah, all kinds of things.
But you've come a long way since your first band, The Kind and the Close Action. Then you went into Innocent Bystanders.
And actually Innocent Bystanders before those aforementioned ones.
Yeah.
Innocent Bystanders was my first serious band, because I'd made it into a band through the Sunday papers called Detour, and they were a covers band. And at the same time, through the ads in the paper, I met this guy who was older than me, called Brett Keyser, and he had also broken up. Well, he'd broken up with his band before, and he was looking for something new. And we started up a bit of a friendship and over listening to records and stuff. And he came down and saw this band that I was playing in, and was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then I think the singer left, or singers. There was 2 singers, and he just sort of hung around and kind of took over. And that basically did some kind of form of guerrilla style sort of mutiny or whatever, or I don't know what you call that, but he just basically just took over the band and commandeered it, and and then said, we're going to start doing my songs. And we're like, okay, everyone right. knows no argument. And we became Innocent Bystanders. And then he sort of systematically started replacing people.
Wow.
And I was 14 or 15, and he would have been 21 or 22. Yeah. And that went on for a few years. And when it came to making the first proper album, we crossed the Nullarbor a few times and worked with Charles Fisher and Peter Walker, who are legendary, producers, Australian producers. Midnight Oil and Cold Chisel and Hoodoo Gurus and, you name it.
Yeah.
spent a bit of our hard-earned money doing that we were making. We were arguably the most successful original band at the time playing in, because it was a very covers dominated band. And from the remnants of that, because he decided to make the record with and change the whole thing and get other people to make the record. So I was left kind of like at loose ends. And that's when the bass player and drummer decided to stay with me. And that was the beginnings of Johnny Diesel and the Injectors. And in the meantime, I was like so broke that the drummer said, look, there's this cover band's forming, and, we're going to make a little bit of money. You can pay off some of your bills and stuff. And I thought, okay, that sounds good. And that was the band called The Kind. And the Close Action thing, that happened for like only a couple of months. That was the stepping stone to Johnny Diesel and the Injectors. But we were a band that sort of played at this Tuesday night or Wednesday night. Was like a hobby thing in this tiny little backstage bar. And that's when I started writing a lot. And because we were two of us, at least, I think we're playing in this covers band. It was like in this kind of a release for us to play this Wednesday night. And then it became serious. Brent Eccles, who ended up being our manager, spotted us at this little bar called the Backstage Bar in Perth and coaxed us over we all wanted to get across the Nullarbor to Sydney. We just weren't sure how we were going to do it. So he kind of put up enough money for us to freight our gear across. And we arrived in Sydney, and that's how I met Jimmy, from sleeping on his couch because he was booked in the studio. And so, we went from doing 9 shows a week around Sydney to doing 9 shows and this tour with Jimmy. Yeah. And we kept doing all the shows that we'd already been booked to do and everything. And it just kind of exploded out from there. And there was a kind of a feeding frenzy with the labels on us. We ended up signing to Chrysalis and, went to Memphis. And I made the first half of Hepfidelity in Memphis as well with the same producer, Terry Manning.
Right.
So that was kind of the trajectory to land.
So where did Diesel come from? Where did Johnny Diesel come from?
Well, that's a fair question, because we were playing like one Wednesday night a week, and it was the lovely woman who was booking the venue. She was a real champion of music, and she called up and said, you guys are like drawing 5 people and a cockroach. I want to put an ad in because you deserve more and blah, blah, blah. I'll put a little ad in the paper, but like, what is your name? And it was like, you don't even have a name, do you? And we're like, well, no, we're kind of reluctant to kind of even admit that we're really a band. We're just doing it as a hobby thing. And it was like, okay. So I'd heard a friend of ours make a joke about our bass player, because I was sharing house with John. His name's John Delzell, and he just found out that his wife was pregnant again. And this friend of ours, Steve, who's kind of used to do lights for us, and he was a man of a huge frame. So it was always a nice guy to have around when we were like unloading the truck and stuff. And he was incredibly funny and quick-witted. And he said, little Johnny Diesel and his little injectors, Of course, those are like essential parts of a truck engine, which I didn't even know at the time. And I thought, that's cute. And it sounds like a 50s kind of, rockabilly band or something. And I thought that kind of suits what we're doing. We're sort of very roots-based. And so when she called back later in the day, because I might have said, look, leave it with me. I'll come back with a name.
I'll think of a name.
Yeah, and when she called back, I said, I've got a name, Johnny Diesel and the Injectors, thinking this will be funny if it goes in the paper and we can show it to John and he'll go, you idiots, and that's pretty much what happened. And then as the weeks went on, no one bothered to kind of change it or even question it. And it just stayed that way. Yeah. I was faced with a decision when we got to the point of making a record, or the planning of making a record and being signed and all that. It was like, well, are you going to go along with this gag? Because everyone just naturally assumed that it was me being in the middle of the stage and all that. And I just thought, well, I can see where this is going. If I say no, it's it's definitely not the path of least resistance. So I just went along with it. Yeah. And it's like, that was one thing I got to do when I went solo, was just kind of, okay, wasn't ever me. So I'm letting that go now. I'm just going to be Diesel. And of course, people still call me Johnny forever, and it's never been my name. Yeah,
yeah. One of those. Well, it worked for the Traveling Wilburys, so
it did.
Why not?
Exactly.
So let's talk about your new single, Ride, which is one of the bonus tracks on the album.
Yeah.
Yeah, great track. Very, very Hepfidelity.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, I think that whole experience was an inspiring time in the sense of I went out really wide stylistically. I was listening to a lot of, things like, Massive Attack and a lot of old like funk records, Eddie Kendricks and things like that. Just I was really going deep into Sly and the Family Stones catalog as well, and rediscovering records that I grew up with as a child, listening to on the floor with headphones, like Inner Visions and Fulfilling This First Finale of Stevie Wonder, and just recapping on all the stuff that really was big to me, to my 6 or 7 year old brain, and it was also the early 90s, if you remember, was a real like resurgence in like 60s and 70s funks. Look at bands like Chili Peppers, and there was a pile of Fishbone. There was a bunch of bands that were fusing like funk and rock together. Of course, Living Colour. Yes. So there was this kind of like kind of resurgence, and suddenly another wave of appreciation for Hendrix. With Pearl Jam citing Hendrix is one of their big influences, and because Hendrix was kind of quiet in the 80s, it was like the 80s were the 80s, and we can talk about that till the cows come home.
That was a weird time.
It wasn't until the early 90s they kind of went back to 3 decades and kind of went, hey, let's feast on that again. So I wanted to kind of like, Hepfidelity was kind of my acknowledgement of all of that music. And if the Johnny Diesel and the Injectors album, if I missed out on doing any funk on that album, I definitely made up for it on Hepfidelity. Yeah. It was a funk fest.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there any particular artist that you could cite as shaping who Diesel is?
At that time, really, I mean, people that were blowing my mind were Prince and Lenny Kravitz was making incredible records. Terrence Trent D'Arby, those were the, like, as far as male solo artists to like listen to and go, wow, they're doing really amazing things. And I still listen to those records and think they are just great records. Yeah. I mean, that's just to name a few, but it was a time for me to kind of really expand outwards, and I felt like I had no boundaries. Like if I wanted to use strings or horns or clavinet or get Bernie Worrell, for instance, because I'd gotten into like P-Funk and just to be able to go, and I also knew of him through the Talking Heads period, which I just the stuff that he kind of brought to the Talking Heads camp was just incredible. Yeah. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to have Bernie Worrell come in and just do his thing on, these songs, and then in he came, he was such a sweet guy. Talk about someone who just loves to just play and make music. That's like, he was just such a pure soul, and just a beautiful, beautiful man. And everything he did was recordable. Like even just when he was messing around, and even the noise that just came out of his instrument was like, record that. That's musical. Like everything that he did was just musical. It was just dripping out of him. And just the pockets that he would find, like these little pockets that you just would never think of. It's like, God, listen, that counter rhythm is just like, I would have never, ever thought of like putting something in there. So it was really great to have people like that just come in and hear it like on first ear kind of value, just roll it and just let them play. You know what I mean? He tended to like not want to like hear it too many times. He'd be just like, he'd hear a little bit and go, okay, I'm ready. Like, and you go, wow, that's quick, and boom, he would just, whatever came out was what you got. And it was beautiful. So,
but you're kind of like that as well. I mean, let's be honest. You're one of the busiest guys in Oz Rock. You produce albums, TV soundtracks. You put out 16 albums in your career throughout. Johnny Diesel and Diesel. And now you've got the TV show called Days Like These with Diesel.
Yeah, look, I guess COVID was a blessing for me in a way that allowed me to even indulge even more into my studio without the interruption of going out on the road. And that it's like I love doing gigs, and but it's a big chunk of the week every time you go out, and you kind of have to like ramp up again. Where was I? What was I thinking? What's happened? Oh, right, okay. It's a little bit of a distraction. And so to be able to just be like in this studio constantly was really great for me. I did a lot of stuff that I don't think I would have, probably gotten to do if the touring machine just kept going through 2020 and 21. But I'm very, having said that, I'm really, really grateful to be like back out doing shows again.
Yeah. And of course the TV show, you're celebrating the lives of some of your best friends in the industry.
Yeah, some of the people that I've met very early on, and it's really great to see. Unfortunately, some have passed, and even up to this like very, very week with the passing of Uncle Archie. It's a bit of a sad reminder that the music industry is actually one of unfortunately one of the industries with a very, very like not very high kind of life expectancy. It's quite tragic, really, and I guess it's contributing factors that cause that. But I hope that changes within years to come for the younger people that are entering the or even entertaining the idea of being a professional musician now, because it's when I look back, the road is just littered with passings. So
but the legacy that they left behind, I mean, the legacy that Archie left is massive.
Oh, it'll just keep growing too. And I mean, the inspiration he's been for Indigenous and non-Indigenous is just unbelievable. It seems like it's just growing exponentially.
Yeah. Well, final question. What vinyl are you listening to right now?
I am really loving the Angel Olsen album.
Right.
Big time. If you don't know Angel Olsen, she's I think an LA-based sort of roots kind of alt artist, and it's just such a beautifully made album, and the songs grow and grow and grow. There's albums that kind of definitely suit being made into vinyl, that are made like right now. Having said that, even it doesn't matter what genre it is, even a Cardi B album would sound great on vinyl. It's just vinyl just sounds so good. And what I love about vinyl is you can turn it like really down low, and it still kind of comes and taps you on the shoulder, like the transients, the energy of the, in the layman's term, the energy of the music, because it's actually physically going up a little needle into a tone arm and being amplified. It's kind of like the closest thing if you don't have an instrument in your house or don't play, or it's having an actual instrument in your house making music, like playing itself. Unlike a crushed down MP3 file that's coming out through a sound block, that's a different experience. But vinyl is like having someone play in your house.
And that's why we have the show. For that exact reason. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, good luck with the release of the 30th anniversary of Hepfidelity. Can't wait to get my copy of the white vinyl, double LP. Yeah.
It's great that you've got all these colors now, like so many colors. I think Green Day have just done the anniversary of one of their records in a color I've never seen before. It just keeps like the palette. The Pantone color palette is just getting white,
Well, and Icehouse did Man of Colors in the three colors.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's pretty amazing. You don't have limitations as to what, like how you want to. I mean, I remember we did a picture disc back in the day, and that was like, whoa, But my friend who's worked in a record store at the time, he was quick to like point out that picture discs don't sound very good. I think they've fixed that problem now, but
I think so.
Back in the day, it was a compromise. It's like, you want the picture, you don't get the sound, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's it. You can't have one or the other. And besides that, the picture goes around. You can't.
But now you can. You can have anything, and you're going to still get the 180 gram, well set, great sounding record now.
Yeah, amazing.
That's pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Long Way to the Top. Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at the Long Way to the Top podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.